Why is Goblin Piledriver never sad? Because he has protection from the blues.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. With free weekly content and free shipping over $100, you can save 5% site-wide by using the promo code MTGMudsta. I'm also sponsored by Face to Face Games, Canada's premier Magic the Gathering store. Using the promo code MTGMudsta will get you 5% off site-wide, with eligible orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. If you're looking for a direct way to help the channel, please consider joining my Patreon and becoming a member of the generic Goblin Gang. Also be sure to check back tonight around 6 PM Eastern Standard Time, as I'll be live streaming some modern games with friends. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game was filmed in my studio, with Max playing Thrasios and Kediss. His deck is a Temur Face Punch deck with a lot of Commander Matters cards. MJ is playing Elminster, which is focused around Scry and casting a bunch of spells. I am playing my newly built Miirym deck, which is Dragon Tribal, and I'm hoping to make a ton of copies of Terror of the Peaks. Last but not least, Nick is playing as Ramos, which is focused around abusing Fable of the Wolf and Owl, so it's basically Simic 5 colors. MJ wins the die roll and starts us off. They draw and play an island for turn. My turn has me playing a tapped Path of Ancestry. Nick also has a tapped land with a Frontier Bivouac. Max wants to be cool and follow the trend, playing a tapped Stomping Ground before passing to MJ. MJ has a Plains and taps it for 1 white for a land tax. I play a Snow-Covered Forest and help MJ out by casting a Nature's Lore, going to find a breeding pool and passing to Nick. Nick plays Reflecting Pool and casts an early game gamble. He finds a card to hand and has me pick one from his hand to discard. The card I pick is a Mirror Maid, and he then casts a Soul Ring and passes. Max plays Botanical Sanctum, which gives him access to enough mana to cast one of his commanders, and Kediss joins the fray. MJ finds some lands from their land tax trigger and puts them to hand. They then draw for turn and play out Reliquary Tower. 3 mana then gets them a retreat to Coral Helm, and they pass turn. I draw and play a Hinterland Harbor, passing. Nick plays a Plains and taps 5 mana for Urban Evolution. He draws 3 cards and plays out Command Tower, passing. Max has a tapped Steam Vents and hits MJ for 1 with Kediss. This deals 1 damage to each of Max's opponents as well, and Max then casts an Umezawa's Jitte before passing turn. MJ has a Plains for turn and gets to scry 1 as it comes in. They then play Jace's Sanctum and pass to me. I play a Snow-Covered Mountain and just pass sadly because dragons are expensive. Nick has an island for turn and casts a Widespread Thieving, a card that I've also come to enjoy in my Ramos deck. He then hides away a card from his top 5, and we then see a Trigon Predator come from hand, and he makes a treasure token. Max has a Snow-Covered Forest for turn and gives Kediss the Jitte. He then swings Kediss at MJ, dealing 1 more commander damage to them, but also deals 1 point of damage to Nick and me as well. He adds 2 counters to the Jitte from dealing damage and passes turn. MJ has an island for turn and scries 1, bottoming it. They then cast a Wrath of God and wipe the board, passing to me. I play a Snow-Covered Forest and tap 6 mana from Miirym, forgetting to get my scry trigger from the Path of Ancestry because I'm bad. Nick just plays a Mana Confluence and passes. Max has a Snow-Covered Mountain for turn and casts Thrasios in his main phase, and then gives the Merfolk his Jitte. MJ draws and plays an island, scrying 1. They then pass with all their mana open. I play a Cragcrown Pathway and then tap 4 mana for Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, having it come in as a copy of Miirym. This triggers Miirym, giving me a Sakashima copy of Miirym as well, so I have 3 online at this point. I then go to combat, but just decide to pass. At the end of turn, Nick takes 1 from the Mana Confluence to cast Ride the Avalanche, and gets a treasure token from the Thieving trigger. This lets him then cast Ramos at flash speed, but he sadly can't put the counters onto Ramos, but that's still not bad. We move to Nick's main phase, and he draws. He plays a Mirage Mirror and passes. Max has a Sulphur False return and pays 4 for a Bloodbraid Elf, cascading into the Sword of the Anime. He then gears up Thrasios with it and swings it at MJ. He goes to find a land, and in response, an MJ casts a Fact or Fiction picking Max. Max makes the piles to have a counterspell, Swords to Plowshares, and Flooded Strand, and a Treasure Cruise within a Dark Waste. MJ picks the pile with Treasure Cruise. MJ then takes the hit for 2 from Thrasios, and Max adds more counters to Jitte. MJ finds 3 lands from their land tax trigger and draws after shuffling. They then play an island and scry 1. They move to cast an Austere Command, picking the modes of destroying all big creatures and all artifacts. Nick responds to this with Mirage Mirror by having it become a copy of MJ's retreat to save it, and floats a green and a blue from the treasures. Before leaving the phase, Nick then uses the mana to cast a Growth Spiral. He draws a card and makes a treasure from the thieving. He then gets to put out a Steam Vents and scries 1 from the retreat trigger. Once all that's done, MJ passes to me. I play a Sokenzen, Crucible of Defiance, and tap 4 mana for Panharmonicon. I then pass my self-imposed Rule of Law turn to Nick. Nick has Zimone Quandrix Prodigy come into play during his main phase, and he makes another treasure token. He then takes 1 from tapping the Mana Confluence to cast a Vampiric Tutor from the Hideaway and loses 2 life to find a card. He then passes turn. Max uses Jessica's Will in his main phase and gets both modes. He exiles his top 3 cards and picks MJ to make a good chunk of red mana. He then casts a Hull Breach, picking Panharmonicon and the Sanctum to destroy. Max then recasts Kediss and follows up with a Tavern Brawler. He then casts the exiled Birds of Paradise and pays 6 mana for an Embercleave, attaching it to Thrasios as it comes in. Moving to combat, he hits Nick. This has Nick taking 4 commander damage, and MJ and I then taking 4 damage from the Kediss trigger. MJ finds more lands with land tax, and draws. They play a Plains and bottom the card from their scry. They then bring out Elminster, and uptick the Walker to draw a card and scry 2. Their next spell costs 2 colorless less, and they exile some cards from their graveyard to help cast Treasure Cruise, drawing 3 more. Sapphire Medallion then comes out, and MJ passes. I draw, and cast an Old Gnawbone, scrying 1 from the path trigger. I'm 99% sure this is a mistake and won't make it around the table, but at this point I can't do very much. Nick has his Mirage Mirror become a copy of Old Gnawbone in his main phase, and I realize my mistake. He then swings it at MJ, dealing 7 and making 7 treasures. He then easily casts the Kami War, and exiles my Old Gnawbone as it comes in, fulfilling my fears. He gets to make another treasure token from a thieving, and then passes to Max. Max exiles a card apiece from Tavern Brawler to each of his commanders, and plays an Opal Palace from exile as his land for turn. Since he's exiled a Tally with Thrasios, that commander gets +6/+0. Moving to combat, Thrasios goes at me. Not wanting to take a ton of damage, Nick channels Colossal Sky Turtle's blue mode to bounce Thrasios back to Max's hand. Max then goes to his second main phase, casting a Tally from exile and passing. MJ gets their land tax trigger and then draws her turn. They uptick Elminster, drawing and scrying 2. They then play a command tower, getting a scry from their treat as it comes in. MJ then casts Approach of the Second Sun, gaining 7 life and putting it 7 cards deep and passing to me. I untap and draw. 2 mana gets me a Dragon Tempest, and I pass. At the end of turn, Nick uses some mana to activate Zimone to draw a card. Nick draws for turn and moves his Kami War to the second lore ability, bouncing a Tally to Max's hand and having his opponents discard a card each. With the ability on the stack, I use a Growth Spiral of my own to draw a card. We then all have to discard a card, and I forget that Orvar has a second ability. Nick then casts Idyllic Tutor, but doesn't go to find the namesake of his deck though. He reveals a Maelstrom Nexus instead, and puts it to hand, and then casts it, taking one from the Mana Confluence. But MJ wants in on this action, and steals it with an Aether Snatch. With nothing else, Nick passes. Max exiles a Blackblade Reforged to the Tavern Brawler on Kediss, and gives it +2/+0. He then draws for turn, and casts the Blackblade, and gives it and the Embercleave to Kediss. Moving to combat, he goes at MJ with his now 13/11 double striking commander. MJ gets taken out with commander damage, while Nick and I then each take 26 damage from Kediss' ability. With nothing else, Max passes. I untap and draw. I cast a Grux Uprising, and then a Scourge of Valkis. I deal the one from the Scourge to Max's face, and one from the Tempest to the Birds of Paradise. I also get to draw from the Uprising, but sadly can't really swing because of Kediss, and have to pass. Nick has his Mirage Mirror become a Dragon Tempest on his upkeep, and then draws, and moves the last lore counter on the Kami War, transforming it into Okagachi made manifest. The Tempest triggers as it comes in, giving it haste and dealing 1 to Max. Going to combat, he swings it at Max and gets the on attack trigger. He gives Max his graveyard, and Max has Nick getting back Vampiric Tutor, knowing fully well he can't cast it. Max then takes the hit, and after that, Nick passes. Max exiles a snow-covered island for Tavern Brawler and plays it for turn. He then casts a Shameless Charlatan and goes to combat. He swings Kediss at me, and I block with a Scourge, but because of the trample from Embercleave, it's still lethal to both Nick and I, and Max wins the game. Game review time. Miirym unfortunately started off pretty slow. I had one piece of ramp with the Nature's Lore early on, but like I said in the game, a lot of dragons are very expensive. Without easier ways to cheat stuff out like Sneak Attack or Monster Manual, I felt like I was dragging my feet most of this game. Nick's 5-color Simic deck is pretty sweet, and he runs a lot of fun cards in Ramos that I've often considered running myself. I wasn't the only player playing Timur at this game, with Max bringing his Thrasios and Kediss deck. I've been a huge fan of Kediss since it was spoiled, and I really like how Max has built this deck. It goes to show how strong partners are, and even stronger still with the background mechanic, which is kind of a more balanced partner effect. That Tavern Brawler card seemed incredible in this deck, and I'm hoping to try it out in a few other decks of my own. MJ's Elminster deck was a little bit slower than the last time we saw it. They were getting a lot of lands, but unfortunately weren't getting tons of reduction. Once more we did see Approach of the Second Sun, but when you telegraph it that early and people have board states, it tends to get you picked on. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.